The RMS Titanic began its maiden voyage with great fanfare and excitement. On April 10, 1912, the enormous ship departed from Southampton, England. Crowds gathered at the docks to witness this historic moment. The Titanic was the largest ship afloat at the time, a symbol of modern engineering and luxury. Many believed it was unsinkable, a testament to human ingenuity. The air was filled with anticipation as passengers, ranging from wealthy industrialists to hopeful immigrants, boarded the majestic vessel, all eager to be part of this grand journey across the ocean, unaware of the tragic fate that lay ahead for so many. After leaving Southampton, the Titanic made its first stop in Cherbourg, France, later that same day. Here, more passengers boarded the ship, adding to the diverse mix of people on board. The stop was relatively brief, just long enough to take on these new travelers and some additional cargo. The cross-channel steamers brought them out to where the Titanic lay anchored, as the great liner was too large for Cherbourg's harbour. The transition was smooth, and soon the Titanic was ready to continue its journey. This stop in France was an important part of its itinerary, connecting continental Europe to the transatlantic route. The following day, April 11, 1912, the Titanic arrived at its final port of call in Europe, Queenstown, now known as Cove, in Ireland. This picturesque harbour was the last chance for passengers to board and for mail to be loaded. For many Irish emigrants, Queenstown represented their last glimpse of their homeland as they set off for a new life in America. The stop was bustling with activity as tenders ferried people and goods to and from the massive ship. It was a poignant moment filled with both hope and farewells before the Titanic turned its bow towards the open Atlantic. With all passengers and cargo aboard, the Titanic finally steamed out of Queenstown and into the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. The ship was now fully committed to its westward journey towards New York City. The weather was fair as it left the Irish coast, and spirits were generally high among both passengers and crew. The powerful engines propelled the liner smoothly through the waters. Ahead lay several days of open sea travel, a routine crossing for many ships, but this particular voyage was destined to become anything but ordinary, etched forever in the annals of maritime history. The Titanic's planned route across the North Atlantic was a standard one for liners traveling between Europe and North America. Ships would typically sail west from the Irish coast, heading towards the Grand Banks of Newfoundland. This area, while a common shipping lane, was also known for its potential hazards, especially during the spring. The Grand Banks are a series of underwater plateaus, rich in marine life, but also a meeting point for the cold Labrador Current and the warm Gulf Stream. This confluence often creates fog and brings icebergs south from the Arctic into the shipping lanes, posing a significant risk. As the Titanic ventured further into the Atlantic, it began to receive multiple warnings about icebergs in its path. These messages came from other ships that had encountered ice fields and large bergs. The wireless operators on the Titanic, Jack Phillips and Harold Bride, were busy sending and receiving passengers' personal messages, which sometimes took precedence over the ice warnings. Some warnings were noted and passed to the bridge, but their full significance was perhaps not grasped. The sheer number of warnings should have indicated an unusually large amount of ice drifting further south than typical for that time of year. Despite the increasing number of iceberg warnings, the decision was made to maintain the ship's high speed. Captain Edward J. Smith was an experienced commander, and it was not uncommon for ships of that era to try and make good time on their voyages. There might have been an implicit pressure to arrive in New York on schedule, or even early for the maiden voyage of such a prestigious liner. The belief in the Titanic's robust construction might also have contributed to a sense of overconfidence, leading to the underestimation of the dangers posed by the reported ice. The North Atlantic in April can be a treacherous stretch of water. The transition from the warmer waters of the Gulf Stream to the colder Labrador Current can lead to sudden drops in temperature and the formation of dense fog banks. Icebergs carved from glaciers in Greenland are carried south by the Labrador Current. These silent, massive threats, mostly hidden beneath the water's surface, were the primary geographical hazard the Titanic faced. The warnings received indicated a significant ice field lay directly in or near the Titanic's path, a fact that would soon have devastating consequences for the unsinkable ship. The night of April 14, 1912 was unusually calm and clear, but also very cold and moonless. The sea was described as being like polished glass, which ironically made spotting icebergs more difficult. Without waves breaking at the base of an iceberg, there would be no white water to signal its presence from a distance. The lookouts, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, were stationed in the crow's nest, peering into the darkness. They did not have binoculars, which were reportedly misplaced, potentially hindering their ability to spot hazards earlier. The extreme cold also made their watch more challenging. At approximately 11:40 p.m. ship's time, lookout Frederick Fleet spotted a large iceberg directly in the Titanic's path. He immediately rang the warning bell 3 times and telephoned the bridge, shouting, "Iceberg right ahead!" First Officer William Murdoch, on duty at the time, ordered the ship hard a starboard, a turn to port, and the engines to be put in reverse. However, due to the Titanic's immense size and speed, around 22 knots, it was impossible to avoid the collision entirely. The ship was too big and moving too fast to respond quickly enough to the last-minute warning. The iceberg did not cause a long, continuous gash in the Titanic's hull, as once popularly believed. Instead, the underwater portion of the iceberg bumped and scraped along the ship's starboard side, popping rivets and causing seams to open in at least 5, possibly 6, of its watertight compartments. The damage extended over a length of about 300 feet. While individual breaches were not enormous, their cumulative effect along this length doomed the ship. The design allowed for any 2, or even the first 4 compartments to flood without sinking the vessel, but not 5 or 6. Immediately after the collision, Captain Smith and the ship's designer, Thomas Andrews, assessed the damage. Water was rapidly pouring into the forward compartments, the forepeak, all 3 cargo holds, and boiler room number 6. Boiler room number 5 was also taking on water. Andrews quickly calculated that with so many forward compartments breached, the ship was certain to sink. The weight of the water in the bow would pull the front of the ship down, causing water to spill over the tops of the watertight bulkheads into successive compartments, a fatal domino effect. The Titanic was doomed. As the forward compartments filled with icy Atlantic water, the Titanic began its slow but inexorable descent by the bow. The angle of the ship grew steeper, making it increasingly difficult for passengers and crew to move around the decks. Distress signals were sent out and lifeboats began to be launched, though not always to their full capacity. The sinking process took about 2 hours and 40 minutes from the moment of impact. During this time, the immense stress on the ship's hull as the bow sank lower and the stern rose out of the water became too much to bear. Witness accounts and later forensic analysis of the wreck confirm that the Titanic broke in 2 pieces. As the bow, laden with water, plunged deeper, the stern rose to an almost vertical angle. The immense structural stress at the midsection, likely around the area of the 3rd and 4th funnels, caused the hull to fracture and tear apart. The stern section then settled back briefly before filling with water and sinking rapidly, following the bow section to the ocean floor. This catastrophic breakup accelerated the final moments of the sinking, sending debris and victims into the frigid water. The Titanic sank in a remote part of the North Atlantic, approximately 400 miles south-southeast of Cape Race, Newfoundland. The wreck site lies at a depth of about 12,500 feet. The coordinates are roughly 41 degrees 43 minutes 55 seconds north latitude and 49 degrees 56 minutes 45 seconds west longitude. The 2 main sections of the wreck, the bow and the stern, lie about 1/3 of a mile apart, surrounded by a vast debris field. Ocean currents in this region, particularly the western boundary undercurrent, have subtly shifted sediments and artifacts around the wreck over the decades it has rested on the seabed. In conclusion, the Titanic disaster was a tragic confluence of multiple factors. Geographical hazards, specifically the presence of an unusually large ice field in the shipping lanes, played a critical role. The ship's design, while advanced for its time, had vulnerabilities concerning the height of its watertight bulkheads. Finally, human error, including the decision to maintain high speed in a known ice region, the possible mishandling of ice warnings and deficiencies in emergency procedures, significantly contributed to the scale of the tragedy. The cold waters and remote location also tragically limited the chances of survival for those who ended up in the sea.